In an effort to prevent such a consequence, the President has directed that the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security work together with our governors to deploy the National Guard to our southwest border to assist the Border Patrol. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to start, I'm going to give you some facts and perspective. Hopefully I can put some things in context. But I want to start with just a very simple statement for today's announcement, which is border security is Homeland Security, which is national security. It's not a partisan issue. It's not something we can separate out. It's core to being a sovereign nation. The President has reiterated this many times. In fact, he has specifically said that a sovereign nation that cannot, or worse not, chooses not to defend its borders will soon cease, in fact, to be a sovereign nation. The threat is real. We've talked about it over the last 18 months. The Department of Homeland Security, since its creation in 2003, has watched for current and emerging threats. Despite a number of steps that this administration has taken, which I'll talk about shortly, we continue to see unacceptable levels of illegal drugs, dangerous gang activity, transnational criminal organizations, and illegal immigration flow across our border. This threatens not only the safety of our communities and children, but also our very rule of law, on which, as you know, our country was founded. It's time to act. So let's talk a little bit about that today. In an effort to prevent such a consequence, the President has directed that the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security work together with our governors to deploy the National Guard to our southwest border to assist the Border Patrol. The President will be signing a proclamation to that effect today. When the President took office last year, he issued a series of executive orders and directives that empowered DHS for the first time in almost a decade to fully enforce our border security and immigration laws. At that time, we saw a precipitous drop in unlawful border crossings, 44% down in the first few months of after his inauguration. This Trump effect, as many of you have referred to it, and we have as well, on illicit border activity was undeniable as smugglers, transnational criminal organizations, and those who are responsible for illicit activity across our border were forced to wait and see if enhanced enforcement efforts would scale back their criminal activity for good. In the last 15 months, under the President's leadership, the administration has taken major steps to methodically strengthen border security. Let me just give you just a few, but we're happy to provide additional details. We stepped up the targeting of dangerous criminal gangs such as MS-13. We removed thousands more criminal aliens than the year prior. We no longer exempt entire classes of illegal aliens from the consequences of breaking our immigration laws. We began the first new border wall system construction in close to a decade. We modified our asylum system processing to more quickly adjudicate claims, and we ended so-called temporary immigration programs that were either constitutionally dubious or were administered in a manner that was inconsistent with the purpose of the law or contrary to the intent of Congress. Despite these actions, we've recently seen the numbers of illegal border crossings rise from 40-year lows last April to back to previous levels. Our current border security and immigration laws fail the American people. The system rewards bad behavior. It does not punish lawbreakers. It undermines our nation's economic interests. Make no mistake, interdiction without the ability to promptly remove those without legitimate cause is not border security. It is not national security. When the president took office, the traffickers, smugglers, TCOs, and the illegal aliens that serve as their currency paused to see what our border enforcement efforts would look like and if we could follow through on the deportation and removal. While we have been apprehending aliens at the border with historic efficiency, these illicit smuggling groups saw that our ability to actually remove those who come here illegally did not keep pace. They saw that there were loopholes they could exploit to avoid detention and removal. And let me give you some numbers to put how that has changed the context of our immigration and border security system. Before 2013, approximately 1 out of every 100 arriving aliens claimed credible fear, which is the first step in the United States asylum process. Today, more than 1 out of 10 do so. Why this matters is because this number unfortunately demonstrates and is indicative of the rising level of fraud that plagues our system. This prevents us from timely helping those who really do need asylum. When we have to deal with the fraud and the backlogs, we are unable to help those truly in need. Before 2011, over 90% of arriving aliens were single adult males. Today, 40% are families and children. The traffickers and smugglers know that if you arrive with a family under our current legal and court system, you have a much better chance of being released into the United States. We have seen the smugglers advertise this as an enticement, and we have seen traffickers, unfortunately, fraudulently use children to gain entry into our country. Before 2009, the last stat here, 90% of arriving aliens were Mexican nationals. Today, nearly 50% are from Central America. The traffickers and smugglers know that these individuals cannot, under U.S. law, be easily removed in an expeditious way back to their country of origin, and so they exploit the loophole. Each of these reflect the effects of legislative and legal loopholes that have made it that much more difficult to remove the bulk of those we apprehend, whether they are criminals, traffickers, gangs, or illegal aliens. Those falsely claiming asylum know that if they use the magic words credible fear, because of the low threshold that currently exists and because of the very large backlog, they will be released with work permits into the interior for many years before they see a judge. In 2012, when DACA was offered, families with children similarly understood that deferred action was on the table, and the possibility of further future deferred action has caused additional migration that continues through today. This is exacerbated because of the deeply flawed Flores settlement agreement, one that we have talked about before, and because of our inability to use expedited removal authority for all unaccompanied alien children. Because of this, we do see many more Central American families with children attempting to enter the country illegally, many more than a decade ago. Smugglers themselves are gaming the system, pure and simple. They take advantage of the loopholes in our laws. They know that we cannot prosecute as we need to stop their behavior, and we know in some cases it takes many years for them to be removed. This, in addition, creates a massive magnet for additional illegal immigration, TCO activity, and criminal activity across our border. Every day, we rely on a number of partnerships to help us accomplish our mission to secure our borders. State and local officials, interagency federal partners, Congress, and of course our international partners. I have been with and will continue to work with these partners. This is a problem that requires all of our attention. This administration has also asked Congress for help. Congress makes immigration law. It's that simple. That is how our system works. Congress makes immigration law. Congress decides which classes of aliens are allowed into the country and which can be deported. We've asked for changes to existing law to close loopholes that exacerbate the challenges we have and often result in a de facto court-ordered or resource-constrained resulting catch and release. The President, as you know, terminated administrative catch and release last year, but due to these loopholes, we often find, particularly those with family, they must be released after 20 days. We asked Congress for additional funds for the border wall system, for detention beds, personnel, as that magnet of lawlessness still draws people by the thousands to our borders. Why not attempt the journey if you have no belief you'll ever be caught? We must change the environment. We must change and reduce those pull factors. Unfortunately, time and time again, Congress has failed to act. Worse still, some members of Congress have continually opposed efforts to secure the border. As a result of this continued congressional inaction, the administration has drafted legislation, and we will be asking Congress again to provide the legal authority and resources to address this crisis at our borders. We will not allow illegal immigration levels to become the norm. More than 1,000 people a day, 300,000 a year, violating our sovereignty as a nation will never be acceptable to this president. Since becoming Secretary, I've spoken with hundreds of members of Congress on the need for legislation. I will continue to speak with anyone who will listen about the need to end catch and release and close these loopholes once and for all.